That's Morning Edition, beginning weekdays at 5 a.m. on Radio IQ.
Radio IQ is broadcasting in digital on WVTF Roanoke, WRIQ Charles City Richmond, WURV Richmond, WVTU Charlottesville, WVTW Charlottesville, WVTR Marion, WISC FM Wise, WQIQ Spotsylvania, WIQR Lexington, WEHC Emory, and in Richmond on 92.5 and Fredericksburg on 94.9. Radio IQ, a service of Virginia Tech.
Last week, Boston Red Sox player Jarren Duran was suspended for 2 games after responding to a heckling fan with a homophobic slur. He later apologized, blaming it on the heat of the moment.
I've had some fans reach out to me and tell me that they're disappointed in me, and I just wanted to let them know that I'm sorry for my actions and that I'm going to work on being better for them.
Men's pro sports have a rocky history with LGBTQ issues, and although teams are trying, some question whether it's enough.
What does inclusion look like? What does advocacy look like? What does pride look like? Putting a rainbow on something doesn't actually mean that you are advocating for the community in any way.
I'm Tiziana Deering. Today on Point, pro sports, inclusion, and the LGBTQ community. Stay with us.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Spear. Singer Patti LaBelle kicking things off tonight at day 2 of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago before an appreciative audience. As NPR's Amanda Bastille reports, tonight's speeches feature the long-anticipated remarks of a former First Lady.
Michelle Obama and former President Barack Obama are expected to be among the headlining speakers this evening at the United Center. The Obamas endorsed Harris for president last month after President Biden stepped aside as a candidate. The endorsement was seen as key in securing her nomination. Also expected to take the stage is Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff. Harris, though, is likely to miss the remarks tonight as she takes to Milwaukee for a rally with running mate Tim Walz. Jimena Bustillo, NPR News, Chicago.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says Kamala Harris's campaign is boosting Democrats' prospects to keep control of the Senate. More from NPR's Deidre Walsh.
Schumer says Harris's ability to connect with middle-class voters is helping in key Senate contests. He touts her background as Attorney General in California.
The ability to really prosecute the case against Donald Trump gives us a feeling of real optimism.
The Senate Majority Leader predicted his party will keep their narrow majority and maybe pick up a seat or 2. He says while Biden struggled with selling his legislative accomplishments, Senate candidates can point to specific infrastructure projects and broadband programs. He admitted Democrats won't win in a lot of rural counties, but they can cut down on the GOP's margin. A spokesman for the GOP's Senate Campaign Committee disagreed with Schumer's analysis and is confident that Republicans will retake control of the chamber. Deirdre Walsh, NPR News, Chicago.
A commission investigating the worst mass shooting in Maine history identified multiple missed opportunities by both police and the military to potentially avert the tragedy. Kevin Miller with Maine Public Radio has more.
The report faults a local sheriff's department for not using Maine's gun seizure law after members of Robert Card's family and his Army Reserve unit raised concerns about his paranoia and aggressive behavior. But the commission says reserve leaders also failed to share critical information with sheriffs and didn't do enough to make sure Card received treatment. Commission Chairman Daniel Wathen, a retired judge, says Card was solely responsible for the shootings.
But the commission unanimously finds that there were several opportunities that, if taken, might have changed the course of these tragic events.
Governor Janet Mills described the report as a step forward on, quote, that long road to healing. For NPR News, I'm Kevin Miller in Lewiston.
Stocks took a bit of a breather today ahead of a speech later this week by Fed Chair Jerome Powell. The Dow was down 61 points. The Nasdaq closed down 59 points. You're listening to NPR. Millions of dollars in federal funding for tribal housing is coming to the northwestern U.S. From member station Northwest Public Broadcasting, Lauren Patterson explains where the money's going.
Tribes in Idaho, Oregon, and Washington state are building new tribal housing with grant funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The Coeur d'Alene Tribal Housing Authority, the Colville Indian Housing Authority, the Quinault Housing Authority, and the Confederated Tribe of the Grand Ronde Community of Oregon are recipients of this round of funding. That's according to Tom Carney, the administrator for the HUD Northwest Office of Native American Programs.
I hope we have continued participation here from the Northwest tribes to work towards reducing the deficit in available housing.
Plans include houses, apartments, and duplexes. For NPR News, I'm Lauren Patterson in Orofino, Idaho.
Alaska Airlines appears to be moving closer to finalizing a deal to purchase Hawaiian Airlines. The $1.9 billion deal passing muster with the Justice Department, which now says it will not challenge the proposed tie-up of the two carriers. The brands of both airlines would be preserved after the merger, which would be unique in an industry where only 4 big airlines dominate the U.S. market. Two carriers appear to have few overlapping routes, and Alaska says the merger would allow it to better compete with American, Delta, Southwest, and United. Crude oil futures prices continue to move lower on some easing of concerns about Middle East tensions. Oil was down 33 cents.
For August the 20th, the board held its regular afternoon session at 3 p.m. today, followed by a closed session. Item M, certification resolution. In the closed session just concluded, nothing was discussed except the matters which were identified in the motions to convene in closed session. Only those matters lawfully permitted to be discussed under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act were discussed. Do I have a motion to adopt the certification resolution?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Radford?
Yes.
Mrs. Hooker?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mrs. Shepherd?
Yes.
Mr. North?
Yes, thank you. Moving on to item N on our agenda for the second reading of ordinances in a public hearing. Item 1, the petition of Reed Road Solar 1, LLC to obtain a special use permit for a major utility service solar farm on approximately 36.48 acres of land zoned AR Agricultural Residential District located at 9150 Reed Road, Windsor Hills Magisterial District. Chair recognizes Philip Thompson, Director of Planning, for the second reading and public hearing. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you mentioned, this is a special use permit for a major utility service. A little background, we had a community meeting back at the Bent Mountain Center on May 9th. The Planning Commission originally heard this application on June 4th. They postponed action to get some additional information, and they voted to do that to their August 6th meeting, and then obviously you as well as the board, or you as well as the Planning Commission held a joint work session with Energy Right on solar energy systems. Property located on Bent Mountain off of Reed Road, kind of not too far off of 221. I'll zoom in a little bit. So the address is 9150 Reed Road. It's a little over 36 acres in size. There's a single family home on the property, and previously it was used for agricultural purposes, and they are seeking a special use permit for utility service major. A couple of photographs of this around the site. So this is the road, Reed Road, that you go to the property, and then eventually that gravel road turns into kind of a dirt road to access the site. Again, this showing that travel way to the site. Picture on the right is the hillside that the solar panels would be located on, and then these are some surrounding views from that property. Again, here's where that, another view of that property on both photos where the solar panels will be located. And again, some other views in a different direction of where the site is located. One of the things that we did follow up with, we did make contact with the Energy Right folks about, during the first public hearing at the Planning Commission, one of the issues that came up was noise from the transformers and what kind of noise would this generate. So we reached out to them. They put us in contact with BARC, which is Bath, Allegheny, Rockridge County. They provide electricity, solar, and broadband. So we ventured up to a little past Lexington and visited a 2.5 megawatt site. Is the one they had. We saw there's one on their property, it was a 0.5 megawatt, but they also took us to this one. And so one of the questions was these inverters at the end of the solar panels and how much noise they make. Don't make much noise at all. The noise is going to come from, and here's just a couple other sites that our pictures from that site visit. So here you kind of see this equipment. So transformer is what's going to make the most noise. And this particular site that's being proposed, I think they'll have two. If you saw me in this photo, which is not that far from where this site is located, maybe 150 feet, 150 yards maybe, couldn't hear it. So again, it's going to be that sound that you have. And here's kind of an example of their equipment yard and what that looks like at this particular site. Site, again, this is their general site plan or concept plan. So they have existing conditions as part of their special use permit set of plans. So here's the layout of the site with the solar panels, three stormwater management ponds, access road with an equipment yard. It'll be all fenced, and there'll be buffers on all sides. It'll be a type E buffer that could either be 50 feet or 75 feet, and they show it in different widths at different points along that. One of the things that they are proposing is they moved the equipment location. So before, it used to be closer down to the bottom of the site, adjacent to the property owner. So it was more closer to that bottom stormwater management pond, was kind of where the original equipment yard was. So to try to alleviate the noise concerns, they moved it further up. And then along, and we'll show this in a second, the berms and the landscaping, that shows it. So along, if you see the light blue, you kind of see a raised area adjacent to the right of the equipment yard. There will be a berm on that side. And then along the bottom, kind of below that bottom stormwater pond, there's another berm along that one property owner property line. So it's going to be 2 to 8 feet. The berm height depends. It gets variable more on the one next to the equipment yard because of the slope. But they also will plant evergreen trees on top of the berm. And so part of that is to help reduce the noise impact. Again, this is showing the decommissioning plan. And we didn't put the whole application in that thing. There were several appendices that we put on our website. But one of the things is they do have a decommissioning plan. We got a revised set of numbers for that. Obviously, if this was to be approved, it would have to go through site plan review process. Once that got finalized, during that time, there will be a final set of, they'll be reviewed by our engineers to determine those costs, to make sure those are accurate for what it would take to decommission the site. They also submitted this from the original application, which is just the sound decibels that go out, radiate out. Now, the way I understand reading this is that this is done with no vegetation in place. But if you look at, Note number 5 says, any existing or planned vegetated buffer will reduce noise by 5 to 8 decibels per every 100 feet of depth. So this is done kind of like without anything in place. So, and I also would imagine that the solar panels themselves and the fencing to some degree will also help with reducing the noise. So utility service major is kind of a catch-all for in our zoning ordinance. So services of a regional nature, which normally entail the construction of new buildings or structures such as generating plants and sources, electrical switching facilities and stations or substations, community wastewater treatment plants, and similar facilities. Included in this definition are also electric, gas, and other utility transmission lines of a regional nature which are not otherwise reviewed and approved by the Virginia State Corporation Commission. So kind of a broad category, covers a lot of things. There are a variety of general standards, most of them probably don't apply. But the use of design standards for utility service major, in considering an application for special use permit, the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors will consider the justification for the location and any alternative locations which may be available. The minimum lot size may be reduced. That's not the case that we need in this case. The height limitation contained in each district may be increased. Again, that's not an issue for this particular use. No major utility shall be located within 100 feet of an existing residence. They're more than 100 feet from any residences. In I-1 and I-2, outdoor storage of materials and equipment, except during construction of a utility facility, shall be prohibited unless specifically requested and approved as part of the special use permit. So I don't think they have any outdoor storage. Buildings and facilities shall be designed to be constructed to be compatible with the surrounding area and not adversely affect nearby properties, except in I-1, I-2. They'll have a type E screening and buffering, so they are providing that. The last two deal with sewer and water utility services, which don't really apply to this use. We talked about the buffer yard, type E, so it's either two different options. They are showing both options in different places, whether it's 75 feet or 50 feet. And then there's the every 100 feet, what's the makeup of the vegetation that has to be in that. Obviously, when it's reduced, it also has a fence that's part of that process. Existing zoning is AR, agricultural residential. So to the north is AR, to the east is AR and AV. AV is Agricultural Village Center. West is AR as well, and then to the south is AG3. As far as future land use, it is a rural village, which talks about limited development activity in this area. So for the June 4th Planning Commission public hearing, there were 6 citizens who spoke. 3 spoke in favor and 3 opposed. Those who spoke in favor of the application cited the economic and environmental benefits of solar energy, as well as the possibility that the project could catalyze additional development of solar energy systems in the region. Those who spoke in opposition, their concerns were about noise, aesthetics, compatibility with surrounding uses, potential trespassing, the unknowns associated with this type of infrastructure, and the amount of tax revenue the project would generate. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on August 6th. There were 5 people who spoke during that public hearing. 1 person in support, 2 people opposed, 1 person had a question, another person represented Energy Right, who spoke in general terms on the benefits of solar energy projects. Those in support discussed the benefits of solar energy, job growth, environmental protection, and energy availability. Those opposed discussed erosion and water runoff concerns, impact to wells, highest and best use for the property. It's not a solar energy project. The marketability of surrounding homes, if this was constructed, construction impacts, property values, and buffers. So, Planning Commission talked about a lot of things. They talked about berms, buffers, ground vegetation. They talked about the special use permit conditions, decommissioning and sureties, solar energy subscription program, lighting and noise, the stormwater, grading, runoff, construction impacts and construction schedule, the solar panels themselves. They talked about property values, impact to home values and visual impacts, surrounding zoning and land uses, and future land use designation. So with that, the Planning Commission does recommend approval of the special use permit with the following conditions. This will take some time. Number one, the site shall be developed in substantial conformance with the concept site plan entitled Special Use Permit Set 9150 Reed Road, Benton Mountain, Virginia 24059, prepared by New Leaf Energy, revised July 11th, 2024, substituting changes required during the comprehensive site plan review process. 2, whenever possible, topsoil shall remain undisturbed. Disturbed topsoil shall remain on site to be used to support the growth of ground cover. Ground cover shall consist of native grasses and pollinator species. 3, the county may retain qualified third-party consultants to review portions of the site plan and to inspect the constructed facility as to any matters that may be outside the county representative's area of expertise. The reasonable out-of-pocket costs incurred by the county for such review by qualified third-party consultants shall be paid by the applicant, the third-party reviewers, and the estimated costs will be submitted to the applicant for approval before the costs are incurred. The county may, in the alternative, accept reports of such review by qualified third-party consultants selected, retained, and paid by the applicant. 4, per Virginia Code Section 15.2-2288.8, the applicant shall pay the county $50,000, the fire truck payment for use towards a four-wheel drive fire truck vehicle to support the county's fire response readiness in the Bent Mountain community where the solar project is located. The fire truck payment shall be paid to the county within 90 days of the building permit approval. 5, if the project secures a place in the shared solar program prior to the beginning commercial operation of the solar facility, the applicant shall work in good faith to use its best efforts to identify residents of Benton Mountain and Roanoke County, Virginia, to voluntarily subscribe to its community solar program. 6, after commercial operation has commenced, if operation ceases for 365 days consecutively, the county may notify the facility owner by certified mail and request information regarding the status of recommended commercial operation. If an attempt to notify the facility operator via certified mail is unsuccessful, the notice may be posted on the property, and the facility owner shall be deemed to have received full lawful notice, invoking the provisions of this condition. The facility owner shall send a response within 90 days of receipt of such notice, providing information regarding the status of operations and an estimated timeline for recommencing commercial operations. If the facility owner fails to respond to the request, or if the county deems the provided timetable for recommencing commercial operations to be unreasonable, the county may hold a hearing before the Board of Supervisors following notice pursuant to Virginia Code Section 15.2-2204. The Board of Supervisors may determine whether to allow the permit to remain, impose additional conditions regarding the timing of the commencement of commercial operations, or to revoke the permit and require decommissioning of the solar energy facility in compliance with the decommissioning plan established for the facility. What I will say is that conditions 3, 4, 5, and 6 were suggested or given to us by the applicant. 7, decommissioning of the site shall be in substantial conformance with the decommissioning plan contained in the concept site plan entitled Special Use Permit Set 9150 Reed Road, Benton Mountain, Virginia 24059, prepared by New Leaf Energy, Inc., revised July 11th, 2024. 8, prior to the issuance of a building permit for the solar energy system, the applicant shall submit to the zoning administrator an itemized cost estimate of the work to be done to completely remove the entire solar energy system and restore the site to its original condition. 9, the applicant shall submit a bond, letter of credit, or other appropriate surety acceptable to the county in the amount of the itemized cost estimate approved by the zoning administrator. An updated itemized cost estimate along with an updated bond, letter of credit, or other appropriate surety acceptable to the county shall be submitted and approved every 5 years to reflect cost increases to remove the entire solar energy system and restore the site to its original condition. And 10, during decommissioning of the site, the applicant will ensure the bond, letter of credit, or other surety shall remain in full force and effect until the county has inspected the site and verified that the solar energy system has been removed and the site restored to its original condition, at which time the county shall promptly release the bond, letter of credit, or other surety. With that, I'll ask for any questions that you may have.
We got to read that again.
There are 10 conditions. I think the county attorney would be happy to read those.
If we got to read that again, we're going to need to take a break.
Anyway.
Any questions?
One question. Mr. Thompson, it's clear that the county code does not contemplate this kind or type of utility services major.
Yep.
And having said that, I understand why our code provides for a type E buffer.
Yep.
But to me, if I'm trying to have a solar operation and I want to put trees all around it, won't the leaves on the trees hinder the receipt of the sunlight to some of the panels, not all of them? And so doesn't that in effect work against the whole idea of solar? Does that, I'm looking at David.
Yeah, so
I rely on your expertise. But
they're probably evergreen trees.
Well, it says deciduous and evergreen.
Okay.
Doesn't it?
You may have to trim them.
Well, my only point is, our code doesn't contemplate this kind of use.
Right.
And I understand we need a buffer. I just kind of wonder, it's almost like we're working at, assuming the board approves this application, almost seems like we're running at cross purposes to what this is intended to do.
There's a forest already on the east of it, the east side and the north. So all we're talking about is on two other sides for buffer, correct, Phil?
It's on all four sides.
Even with the existing, because of the zoning?
Right, because they brought it down. So here's what I would say, is the 50-foot buffer or the 75-foot buffer is you have a certain amount of vegetation you have to plant. Doesn't mean you have to plant it all on, you can plant it on the outside of the buffer, right? It could be on the far edge of that. And I would imagine the applicant, whoever builds it, will design it so it's not impacting the use of the solar system.
Well,
would be my assumption.
Assuming we vote in favor of it, I want it to be functioning and be a positive process.
Right.
And I don't want our ordinance to inadvertently frustrate the goals and purposes. That's all.
Right.
That might be a good question for the petitioner.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
And I do think, one of the things, obviously, this is the first one, we will go back and probably start to craft something for these types of facilities in our zoning ordinance. Similar to how we did it for what was supposed to be wind energy, right? Because wind energy would have fallen under this, and so we crafted specific regulations associated with that. My guess is, I'm pretty sure we've already gotten the direction from the Planning Commission, is to go back and look at our ordinance and try to address more specifically for solar. And then in that process, I'm sure we will look at buffers and what is probably more appropriate. Now, go back to a slide. So, number 7, if you see on this list, type E screening and buffering consistent with our section of this ordinance shall be required unless specifically modified as part of the approved special use permit. So I would take that if the board wanted to, as part of this action, you could modify that requirement. That's how I read number 7.
Because in my travels, particularly like in Delaware and Maryland, I've seen very large solar arrays where it has a buffer, but the buffer is bushes that are like 4 feet high.
Right.
But nothing, not a tall tree or anything of that nature.
Right, because you don't have shade, right? You don't want shade.
You don't want shade, but I don't know.
So anyway, I think you have if you so choose to, you could change that as part of the approval process.
What do you think, David?
I agree. The shade is the enemy to a solar power farm.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Anyone else have
Yeah.
any questions, Mr. Thompson?
I do. I got a couple questions. Philip, the three stormwater ponds, they're still subject to our county inspection?
Yes.
What, every year? Or
Yeah,
every?
yes.
two
It
or
would go
three?
through our normal site plan review process. We would make sure that they are installed appropriately. It would be inspected however they are inspected with all other facilities in the county.
Okay, all right. When you so graciously read those 10 conditions, so 7 through 10 really dealt with decommissioning.
Mm-hmm.
If we had an ordinance or something in place, we wouldn't have to have a repeat of that for the next
Right,
one.
and so from a staff perspective, when we were generating, or staff was generating that, we actually looked at other ordinances, and the language came from other localities' ordinance regarding decommissioning.
Okay, all right, very good.
So in large part, what you came up with was from other.
Yeah, we
County.
looked at a couple other ordinances, and they had in their ordinance a decommissioning section, so
Right.
we borrowed generously from those sections to come up with the conditions.
Thank you.
I have one quick question
Did you,
from staff.
I'm sorry, did you finish?
I am done until I hear from the petitioner.
Okay, Mark.
And my question might be better suited to the petitioner, but do you know of any grading of the soil other than for the stormwater ponds?
I'll tell you what I know, and I'll let them
Okay.
follow up. So my understanding is the only grading on site is for the stormwater ponds.
Good.
And that the grading of the ponds, they'll use the dirt from that for the berms.
Okay.
My understanding is they come in, they can correct me from what they said at the meeting, is kind of, you're drilling holes. You're not grading the entire site, you're just grading the holes for the actual, I guess, structures that will hold the panels.
So as I understand it, the vegetation will stay in place.
Correct. And they will actually plant additional native species and pollinators in that area. And they'll talk about how they have, the design of the stormwater ponds is probably over-designed because they have to factor in the solar panels as being impervious surface, even though it'll rain, it'll run off, and then it'll hit grass and then come out. So, but they have to account for that square footage in providing stormwater. So that's how my understanding is the stormwater facilities were calculated and why they have all of those facilities. But I think it is, and they'll tell you, probably over-designed for what the actual runoff will be.
Thank you.
Okay, this time would, any more questions further from Mr. Thompson before we go to the petitioner? Okay, I'd like to invite any representatives for the petitioner to speak and take any questions.
Maybe they can, you want it this, or you want the whole?
Hi, good evening.
Welcome.
Oh,
We just lost you.
gosh. Move it back.
No signal. There you go.
Okay, I won't touch it. Quentin will.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for your time today. I'm Jessie Robinson, Senior Project Developer with New Leaf Energy, and here with me is Quentin Wood, our project engineer. We're working with Mr. Glenn Reed on the proposed project at 9150 Reed Road. New Leaf Energy, we have 40 years of experience developing solar projects across the nation. We've developed more than 950 megawatts of solar projects. So the project proposed tonight is a shared solar project, which is community solar, and that program is for projects 5 megawatts or less. This project is 4 megawatts, and it's a program in Virginia that allows folks to subscribe and receive a savings on their electric bill. Only requirement is they have a bill with that utility, so Appalachian Power. There's two main types of scales for solar projects. This one is what we would call small scale or distributed generation, where you interconnect to the distribution lines that run along roads that you see commonly. So like the picture on the top left kind of shows what that looks like. And then utility scale projects are usually bigger projects. Those connect to transmission lines. So this would not be that scale project. And here's a picture of a couple of pictures of a project that we've developed. This one was in Illinois. On the left shows a fixed tilt racking system, which is what we would propose here. And the top right picture is a transformer, which I think y'all also saw from Mr. Phillips' presentation. And the bottom right shows string inverters, which is what we would be using on this project. And this picture here is another project of ours from New York of a similar size, just showing you what it looks like aerially.
Before you leave that picture, I don't see any buffer around that one, any vegetative buffer. Do you, Mr. Mahoney?
Well, sort of from little short bushes or trees on the left, but no, I don't.
But the others have natural vegetation that probably does help buffer it from neighbors.
Yeah.
That was already in place. And you can see, even though we don't have a perfect aerial visual there, you can see that there is some spacing between the vegetation and the solar arrays.
I guess it's a transmission line in the lower right-hand corner.
That looks like distribution.
Oh, distribution, okay.
Lower right, that way.
It's an existing.
Lower right, yeah.
Looks like an existing.
Yes. Yeah, looks fine.
How high are those panels? How high are you planning on putting the solar panels off the ground?
Yeah, so they'll be less than 15 feet. So since we're following more or less the terrain, as the terrain kind of, varies throughout, you're gonna have that varying height, but they will be less than 15 feet.
So there's plenty of room to get under there with a mower or?
Yeah, I believe the leading edge is approximately 30 inches off of the ground.
Okay. Go ahead, thank you.
Okay. And like y'all saw in the county presentation, here's where the project's located. To the north is the substation that this project would be going to. A couple reasons why we chose this site. It has the interconnection infrastructure that we need already located there. So that distribution line already exists at Poor Mountain Road. That's a big thing that we look for when looking for a project. It's also in Appalachian Power territory. That's kind of a main requirement for shared solar eligibility. It's a zone that allows us to apply for a special use permit for this use, and we won't be impacting wetlands with this project. We also don't really have to clear trees at all, which is another plus. It's already no vegetation primarily. And with the topography of the site, we can sort of use it as it's existing for the design, and that can help shield the visibility of the project naturally rather than having to alter the grade of the land. And the project can sit pretty far back from the roads, like 600 feet to 1,000 feet from the roads.
This slide here is based upon the community outreach efforts that we did do at the Bent Mountain Community Center. And as a result of the community meeting, we had met with a couple landowners surrounding that. So this kind of shows you the general distance to some of the closest properties. I believe the closest one is to the southeast, which is 265 feet from the facility itself. And I believe that we provided you with an updated community outreach summary as well. Project overview, I know that Philip did a great job going through the bulk of that. So I'm just going to kind of focus in on, we got about 18 acres that's fenced. Out of that fenced area, we're looking at 5.7 acres being under panel, which is going to come into play with our stormwater. And we have approximately 10 acres associated with the access, landscaping, and the stormwater. And again, as previously mentioned, our landscape buffer varies from 50 to 75 feet. But in general, you know, we meet or else we exceed your zoning requirements as part of this project. So here's a quick cross-section of the pad, and then we also have the berms that Phil talked about as well. At the upper right is a top view. Looking down, you can see on the right-hand side we have 16 string converters. Then on the left-hand side of the pad we have two 2000 kV transformers. And the pads that are more centrally located is our switchboard communication equipment. At the bottom we have a quick cross-section of that transformer, or the two transformers. They're approximately 6 feet in height, just to give you some general idea as to, you know, the size of these transformers. And then in addition to that, we typically have like a monopole with motion sense lighting, just so if anything need to visit the site, say in the evening, we at least had some light for the actual equipment. Other than that, we don't look to have any type of lighting associated with anywhere else on the facility.
Before you move on, go back to that, I just want to show the other supervisors. Your berms have type E screening evergreens on top of the berm, not deciduous evergreens. Okay. So how high do you like to go?
So that's something that we'll really work through as part of the site plan process with the county.
Okay.
I would be looking to keep something at a more of a, maybe a 20-foot height. So that way you're not really, like you said, the trees tend to grow relatively fast, you know, maybe 2.5 foot to 2 every year. The project life cycle is up to 40 years. So we like to try to specify a type of tree where it's not going to grow super tall to where it's going to actually affect the shading. Mm-hmm. We're primarily focused in on the ground level view for the landscaping is what we're trying to achieve. And that's something that, you know, we would work through with the county as part of the site plan process.
I think for your closest neighbors, that would be the most appropriate. Mm-hmm. The ones that were very visible, I think it was the 260 feet or so.
Yeah, and that was the intention behind that south berm, was to get that immediate year one screening from the ground view with the placement of the evergreen, so it wasn't going to, you know, lose its leaves or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So it provided that initial buffer right at year one.
That's good.
The noise exhibit, Philip had already kind of covered this. We looked at the approximate noise level at the closest property line, which is 200 feet to the north, which is actually owned by our landowner's brother, and it's approximately 55 decibels. And then the noise to the road is approximately 43. And to kind of put that into comparison, 55 decibels is very similar to like a moderate rainfall. This slide here focuses in on the landscaping plan. I know it went into detail regarding the berms and also the trees associated with that. But aside from that, we are looking to plant those native grasses within the fenced areas with some pollinators as well to help promote, you know, the birds, bees, and pollinators. Mm-hmm. So the construction of this facility is approximately 6 to 8 months. It's going to follow the typical construction operation from, you know, Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5. And then once the facility is up and running, we have a project life cycle of up to 40 years. It's operated remotely, so you might have bi-weekly to monthly visits out on site just to check on things. And we anticipate, you know, 2 to 4 long-term jobs as a result of the project. The decommissioning, Philip went through that in great detail. The bond would be held by the county prior to construction beginning. Our project does use Tier 1 panels that do meet the T-clip requirements for non-hazardous waste. And the bulk of the material associated with this project is recyclable as well, from your wires to your the poles to even the aluminum kind of around the rack, the panels as well. And the solar panels themselves, you know, can be upcycled and reused secondhand or recycled. And in general, the system removal takes about 4 to 6 months. Stormwater associated with these facilities is very similar to other types of site developments. We have to meet the water quality and quantity requirements outlined within the Virginia Code. So the water quality focuses in on the volume and pollutant or the nutrient loads associated with the conversion of the existing site to what would be on the post-condition side. Those are addressed through your basins, your simple disconnection by using vegetation and channels. As far as the water quantity, that was displayed in our site plan with the different stormwater basins. And that's really to evaluate the pre-development to the post-development condition to ensure that the runoff rates and volumes are equal to or less than the pre-development in order to ensure that we're not causing any type of downstream hazards to the other properties and also no erosion to downstream properties.
So just a couple more slides. This is a common question we get, so I like to include this. We get asked if folks' property value will be affected by the solar project. So we've had studies done with a third-party, Cone Resnick, it's an accounting firm, and they've looked at projects built in Virginia and across the country. They compare like the sales price of homes before a project was built and after, and they have found no impact on sales price for those homes. This picture here shows like a utility scale size project in Olive White County. I think Philip covered these proposed conditions well, so I won't belabor that. Last slide here, just some benefits of the project. So like I mentioned, this project will be part of the shared solar program, which allows folks to subscribe and get a savings on their bill, which we're estimating to be about 10 to 15% on their bill. To put that into perspective, this project could have about 600 subscribers, and that would be like $161,000 in savings total across all the subscribers for 1 year. This project also is subject to real estate tax and personal property tax for the county. And I've been working with Mr. Peters and Ken Fay on the calculations for that. But I think it'll fall somewhere around $550,000 over the project lifetime, which compared to like current taxes on the land over that same time period, it's a 15 times increase on taxes.
There's a question on page 305 of the package. There was a spreadsheet. Did you provide that spreadsheet?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, well, on the one on the right side, which was the exemption,
Machine and
that
tool.
only applies, according to our attorney, on sites that are 5 megawatts or larger. Yours is what, 4?
So the revenue share, are you talking about the revenue share?
No, I'm talking about the revenue share. I'm talking about, there's 2 spreadsheets on a legal-sized piece of paper. It's the one on the right, which is personal property.
Machinery and tools? Okay. Like the depreciation rate? That's something that the county determines.
What's
So,
that?
That's something the county determines, and that's like just a number I put in to calculate it.
Sure.
And then it's up to you guys what that number actually is.
Did you come up with those numbers, or did you come up with those numbers working with staff?
I think I used 15% depreciation. That was just a plug number.
Plug number, that was your estimate.
Yeah.
We're going to have staff look into the current personal property rate compared to the revenue share numbers you put in there.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that's
But we thank you for that information.
no problem, and we're happy to do whichever one's the higher of the two. We're totally fine with that.
Thanks.
Okay. Yep. And then just a couple other things about the project. Like Quentin mentioned, there's very few visits needed to the site once it's built, so there's not really like an increase to traffic to the area. Also, we are upgrading the distribution line that we're interconnecting to with Appalachian Power. They're doing a study, and they'll do the actual upgrades at our expense. And so anyone along that circuit, that line's just a little bit more reliable, a little bit less likely for like a brownout or a blackout. So that's it. Happy to answer questions.
Any more questions for the petitioner, Mr.
Yeah.
Bradford?
Thank y'all so much for letting us interrupt you. It was sort of a rolling, you were going, and we kept asking questions. I appreciate that very much. The shared solar program that's in Virginia, so what's the radius? Who can apply for that up in that community? How far away from the complex?
So, as a subscriber,
Right.
there's kind of two requirements, I guess. You need to have a bill with Appalachian Power, and then Appalachian Power is going to set what's called a minimum bill. So that's the minimum amount they're going to have anyone who's in the program pay. And that was also the case for Dominion's program, and their minimum bill was about $55 for the average residence. So if your bill is normally less than that, you won't see savings, so you probably wouldn't want to subscribe. There's no benefit. Other than that, it's really anyone, but by the condition, we would first look to Benton Mountain area and Roanoke County before expanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it will benefit the residents and the businesses up there. Okay. And you covered this at the Planning Commission also?
Yeah.
This program? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And the other projects that you've talked about that you've done, do other states have shared solar programs?
Other states have community solar programs.
They do?
Yep.
Okay. And do people take advantage of that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is no cost to subscribe to, so it's really a nice benefit. Yeah.
Okay, that's all I had for the petitioner.
It makes me wonder, Mr. Lubeck, thank you. Mr. Lubeck, in your memorandum you've shared with us at our request, I don't see anything in there about the topic that was just being discussed. Could you at some time inform the board on any details?
I'd be happy to. I actually reached out to their attorney this last week and obtained some information from their attorney. It's something that I would certainly like to learn more about, but I can certainly share with the board what I've learned, and
thank you.
Get more information.
Anyone else have any questions, Mr. Mahoney?
Based upon your experience and the other projects you've done in other states or in Virginia, what would you recommend or what would you like to see for a buffer around this operation that addresses concerns of neighbors with respect to visibility or noise? From your experience, what would you recommend?
To be honest, the way we have the berms laid out, I would be targeting more of a low growth. Like I said, when I think of a landscape buffer, I think of if I'm standing on that piece of property, I want to be able to just not really see much of it. So that's why I was thinking of the evergreens as far as on top of the berm. And then, just for some, I don't like to drive by and see a uniform mix and have it really stick out. So I like to kind of intermix that with something a little bit more native up front to kind of make it seem like it blends in.
Okay. From other solar farms that I've seen in other states, what do you call it, where it tilts and follows the sun?
Yeah.
Will these be doing that?
No, so this is fixed. You're talking about a tracker system. They typically run in a general north-south direction, and they're driven by a motor on a main shaft. And it kind of looks like a drive shaft on a car, to be honest with you. And it'll actually follow the sun. These are fixed tilt, so it's going to be positioned generally in an east-west direction. And then you're going to have a fixed angle of 43 degrees or something to that effect. So they're just going to be very stationary.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Any more questions?
I'm good for now.
Okay. This time, and thank you very much for the good
Thank you.
presentation. Appreciate you. At this time, we will open the public hearing. We appreciate all who have come to address the board today. When your name is called, please come forward and state your name and address prior to sharing your comments. Each person is permitted to speak up to 3 minutes. At the front of the podium is a light system that tells you how much time you have remaining. When the light changes from green to yellow, please share any concluding remarks. When the light changes from yellow to red, your time is ended. While the board desires to hear from all who desire to speak, we ask that speakers refrain from repeating comments already made by others. At this time, we have the first person to speak, Jeffrey Shalver. If you please would come forward, state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Chairman North, and actually the last name is Shalver, by the way.
I'm sorry?
Yes, sir. I'm Jeff Shalver, and I reside at 4860 Catawba Valley Drive in Catawba, Virginia, and the zip code is 24070. And I want to thank this opportunity for letting me speak tonight in favor of this shared solar system. I think you have a copy of my letter I sent. And I just want to highlight a few things on the letter. As being a resident of Roanoke County for over 50 years, I'm excited about this opportunity for our citizens to be able to have a solar common, a shared system to share in with renewable energies. I have firsthand experience with solar energy, having installed an 8,600 kilowatts in my house in Catawba. It's a ground array, put it in several years ago. And as being a master electrician, I was able to use my own skills to install that. And also in a professional, I'm a senior director of a adjoining school district, and we have installed them in 7 of our schools. And we see fast, significant savings for us as a school district. So professional and personal, first hands on this. So, and it really just it benefits my belief in the importance of renewable energies. Benefits to the community. This project will benefit the residents who can install solar systems due to shading, like was already talked about, or just financial limitations. By participating, they can access solar energies and receive credits on utility bills without the need for large upfront capital cost. It aligns with the county goals. The Reed Road Solar Project aligns with the county's sustainability goals. It provides access to renewable energies, lower energy costs, and support environmental conservative efforts. In closing, I urge the Board of Supervisors to support this and approve this project. Doing was demonstrating not only the county's commitment to sustainability and forward-thinking in the future, and also gives our citizens options. We have recycling options. This gives our community another option to participate in renewable energies to benefit the environment. And I'm open for any questions anybody may have.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you. Next speaker, Dan Crawford. Mr. Crawford, for the record, if you'd give us your name and your address. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. I'm Dan Crawford of 2311 Kipling Street, Southwest in Roanoke. I'm chair of the Roanoke group of the Sierra Club. I've been here before. My primary focus, what consumes most of my time and energy, is renewable energy and the cure, or the cure for climate change. I've talked with a lot of people about the issues, and one of the things I hear, in my opinion, too often is people saying, but wait, we don't need solar panels on our farmland. We don't need turbines on our mountains. Distributed on people's roofs is going to take care of it. It's going to fill the bill. I've heard it way too many times for years. What I'm going to share now helps us grasp that whole idea. Aaron Berryhill, solar manager for Virginia Energy, tells us that at the end of 2015, Virginia had no solar farms, no utility solar facilities. At that time, we had about 3,000 distributed sites, kilowatts on people's roofs. 6 years later, at the end of 2021, in Virginia, we had 51 active solar farms. Interestingly, they drew the line at 5 megawatts. So this one wouldn't even count. 5 megawatts is a lot. Right now, the largest solar facility in the area is at the Veterans Administration, 1.6 megawatts. So when this project is built, Roanoke County will have something to brag about. You'll have the biggest solar facility in the area. Now, all of these solar facilities, these 51 big solar farms, are well east of us. We're having a little trouble here in the west getting public opinion and basically getting it done. Now, like I say, there were 51 solar farms. Bottom line, what do you produce? What's your output? Their output capacity then was 2,657 megawatts. Wow, now we're talking. At the same time, we had 26,000 distributed sites, people's roofs, producing kilowatts. Their combined output capacity was 248 megawatts. Now, we need everything we can get, right? We need 248, we need 2,657. But if we're going to save our bacon, we need the big numbers. And that's why I'm here tonight, and that's the thing that drives me. We need to get big. It's happening in the rest of the state. It's happening in the rest of the country. It's happening in the rest of the world. It's just not happening here. But we have the opportunity to now open the door to a solar farm. There are copies of those details I left here in case anyone wants them, because I know you have been talking about solar. You may have heard people say the same thing I've heard. Oh, we don't need solar farms. We don't need acres of panels. The distributor's going to cover it, and it's not. So these details might be convenient for you as well. A few other details.
Want to wrap up your comments, please?
That's it. I'll wrap it up. About 5 years ago, our neighbor to the south, North Carolina, was second in the nation in solar capacity. Now, who's second? Texas. Texas. Number one in wind because they have the wind. You know, matter of fact, talk to a Texan, they'll say there's nothing between the Gulf of Mexico and the Arctic Circle but bawbar and tumbleweed. Talk about wind. Oh my goodness, Texas, Oklahoma, even Iowa, other places, lots of wind. But now, they're number two in the nation in solar. Why? Solar sells itself, the cheapest electricity on earth by a wide margin. Even if climate change weren't an issue, solar is the way to go. Solar or where appropriate wind. I really appreciate your time tonight. And on the sheet of paper, if you want one, she has some copies, is contact information if you have questions for me. And thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our third speaker tonight is Ben Wilson. Ben, would you please state your name and address for the record? Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and Board of Supervisors. My name is Ben Wilson. I live at 2625 Tillett Road, Southwest Roanoke. As you all know, I'm a new resident to Roanoke, and as a matter of fact, this interaction with the Roanoke County Board of Supervisors Planning Commission was my first interaction with Energy Right. And so it's been really exciting for me to not only to get to know you in the county, but also to get to know the space and get to know Energy Right as well. As I guess I alluded to, I work for Energy Right and represent them here tonight. We presented to you in June, and so I won't belabor the points that we brought up. Obviously, we talked about how solar is a safe land use by allowing property owners, landowners to utilize their land in a way that generates them profit while also generating economic benefits for the community is very important, but it also protects those property rights that we at Energy Right believe is the beginning and end of this conversation. The economic prosperity in America is grounded in that firm belief in property rights, and we believe that you have the opportunity to forward that here tonight. Overall, really just want to say thank you for engaging with Energy Right. We have had a great time speaking with you all and being able to provide those resources. As the Planning Commission has alluded to, and Philip had mentioned earlier, there may be some conversation about ordinance language drafted in the future. That's our bread and butter. Energy Right loves to have conversations about that ordinance language and how you can incorporate the things that we talked about back in June that were incorporated here into more of that concrete language in the policy. And we want to be a resource moving forward for you and the rest of the county as you continue to navigate this space. For me, that's it, but I think you all have my contact information. I'm more than happy to have a further conversation about this, but I look forward to the next time that we get to interact. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. This time, I have no further people to sign up to speak. Is anybody else in the audience who wanted to speak that has not? Okay, then we'll close the public hearing. And this time, is there a motion on the petition?
Yes, I'm ready, Mr. Chair, to make a motion with a few comments.
That's fine. Just one question, Mr. Lubeck. We got to read all that again?
I was going to take care of that.
No, sir, you can
got it
simply
here.
refer to that. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you do, Mr.
Yeah,
Bradford.
I've got it
You're
worked
so
out.
efficient.
I made notes. Yeah. So let me start off just by saying I am absolutely excited about this project, small-scale solar in my district. And let me tell you a little story behind that. My senior year in college, we had to do projects, management or marketing projects. And so we were grouped up in 2 or 3, cohorts together. And my topic was to find alternate energy sources. So I had to go find that. So back in the late 70s, where we had libraries and we had to use magazines,
Books.
and books, I had to do my research. But I found an article about water-based solar panels. So I wrote that part of the project with my team about water-based solar panels. Yeah, it was about, at that time, 20, 30 pages. And presented it. We all got an A for it. And I thought, who in the heck would want to do this, back in... So my dad read it. And so after that, my dad started with me Valley Solar Systems in 1979. So we created Valley Solar Systems, and we installed 10 water-based solar projects that heated hot water. Pulaski County, Roanoke County, Botetourt County. And guess who installed them?
You.
So I had firsthand knowledge of that. And, I was always fascinated by when the electrical side of solar panels. So here we are 46 years later after that report I did, and my father, he and I tried it for a while. It was okay for a couple of years, and then I graduated and moved on to a different job. So he didn't do it much after that. But it gave me a lot of experience and knowledge about solar energy and the impact that it can have, with a renewable resource. And so right on, I appreciate the 3 that talked. And I did go up and look at the property. Ms. Hooker came with me. Great piece of land. I mean, it lays well with that east to west orientation for the panels. I think the berms with the low-lying evergreens are going to do a pretty good job. You won't see the edging of the panels. I'm really excited about the shared solar program, and that's sort of a hidden gem I just realized. So golly, it's fantastic. So with all that said, Mr. Chair, I'm ready to make a motion.
Go right
Okay,
ahead.
thank you. I find that the proposed special use permit, number 1, meets the requirements of Section 30-19-1 of the Roanoke County Code, and that the proposed special use conforms with the standards and set forth in Article 4, Use and Design Standards of the Roanoke County zoning ordinances. Number 2 involves a utility service which is not contemplated in the Roanoke County Comprehensive Plan's future land use category, but is a use which is integral to the needs of the citizens of Roanoke County. And 3, will have a minimum adverse impact on the surrounding neighborhood and community. I therefore move that we approve the petition to obtain a special use permit with the following 10 conditions as read by Philip Thompson, our Director of Planning.
Great move.
Can you read them again, Mr. Radford?
That is my motion, Mr. Chair.
I would say it's a pretty good motion there. But is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion on the motion? I got to tell you one thing. That was about one of the most efficient motions I've ever seen, and I'm sure it'll be used again in the future. All right, if there's no further discussion, will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Radford,
With a lot of sunshine, yes.
Mrs. Hooker,
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mrs. Shepherd,
Yes.
Mr. North.
Yes. Thank you. Moving on to item O, citizens' comments and communications. We have anyone else signed up to speak on any other topics? Okay, then we'll move on to reports and inquiries of board members. Point of correction. Mr. Lubeck, did I close that public hearing?
I believe you did, sir.
Okay, that's what I thought. I want to make sure. All right, Mr. Radford.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just got really one thing. Last week, Mr. North, Ms. Hooker, and I attended the VACO, Virginia Association of Counties, their mid-year or August meeting. All three of us are on different steering committees. I happen to be on the VACO Environmental, Energy, and Land Use Steering Committees. We actually talked about solar farms, but our main purpose was to zero in on our legislative program for the whole VACO, but ours was drilled into that one steering committee. We did talk, about a lot of different items. We talked about different energy uses, and that's where solar farms came up. We talked about data centers. We also talked about, I'm trying to dig through the paper here, where in the General Assembly, which I didn't know if everybody on our board knew this, but the stuff that passed, one item was short-term rentals. Senate Bill 544 prohibits a requirement for a special exemption, special use or conditional use permit for use of a residential dwelling as a short-term rental where the dwelling unit is also legally occupied by the property owner as his or her primary residence. So maybe we can decrease some of these rezonings by right now based on what the General Assembly gave us. I'm sure this is something that we ought to consider.
Absolutely.
So we can take the load off of all these rezonings that were on these short-term rentals when we have people, the property owners are the primary resident. So I wanted to pass that along.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Shepherd.
I really don't have anything other than, for once, I don't have anything. I just want to thank Madeline, Rhonda, and Kaylin for all of your help the last couple weeks. I know I've drove you all crazy, so thank you.
All right, Ms. Hooker.
I was just going to follow up on that VACO commentary. I sit on the Education Committee and had some very positive interaction with the Education Committee. One of their main points was just making sure that the state was encouraged to catch up with some of the state funding according to the JLARC study. JLARC report says that we need to catch up to where we used to be in state level funding for local education, and so that was very well received by all the Education Committee. And then yesterday, reported to VACO regarding our legislative agenda, and it was really quite well received. And we felt like we were in a pretty good place, comparatively speaking, with some of our efforts in getting our legislative agenda out to the right people and make sure that our causes were heard and heard well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Mahoney.
On Saturday, August 17th, Martha Hooker, Phil North, and I had the opportunity to attend the festival in India down at Elmwood Park. We were invited to join in that festival by Sunny Shaw. And so publicly, I want to thank Sunny Shaw and all of the volunteers at the festival. It was a wonderful afternoon. I had an opportunity to eat a lot of wonderful Indian food. I will not be able to tell you what I ate, but it was all great. Spicy curry, it was fantastic. So I want to thank Sunny Shaw, and it was just a wonderful opportunity. I think it really shows the diversity of our community and the how important, I think, the Indian community is in the Roanoke Valley in terms of economic development and jobs. It was just a great afternoon. The other comment I want to make is I do have a concern based on Mr. Radford's comments being such a cheerleader for solar. If he is such a cheerleader, he and his dad wrote into the homeowner association covenants at Glen Meadow that we are not allowed to install solar panels on our roofs.
No.
And he put that in there. So
Oh, my goodness.
I think might need some correction here.
Oh, interesting.
It didn't get my proof.
I see.
Our attorney, our outside attorney.
Always blame it on the attorneys, I get it.
It was the attorney.
I see.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Been a long time since we had a board meeting, about a month, so there was a lot of things that went on, but August 5th, we had a Sanderson Drive community meeting. A lot of people came out to Hollins Library, and I think that may come before us in a month. So after Labor Day, and after it goes to the Planning Commission, I want to invite each one of my colleagues to go out and look at the property that's industrial that could become residential one day, and also to look at the intersection at Sanderson and Shadwell, which really is a problem early in the morning and in the afternoon. And we'll take a look at that on the ground. I think going out to some of these sites is really beneficial because if you haven't been there, it's not the same when you're considering it.
You're right.
So look at your calendars, let me know when you can go, and I'll try to accommodate your request.
It'll take us to lunch.
National Night Out, we had one new Hollins site location, and our police department was there, and we went out there try to get that momentum going in the future. It was in the city, but it was at the Hollins Road Baptist Church, which is on Old Mountain Road. We started our legislative meetings. We met with 4 of our 6 or 7 delegates already. A lot of good commentary. And of course, we did go to VACO. And one of the things in transportation that I'm trying to get in VACO's letter to go to the governor on the budget is the BRIC, which is the Blue Ridge Innovation Corridor 220 initiative. And so hopefully that'll make the letter that goes to the governor with budget request. And then today, County Administrator Richard Kaywood and Doug Blunt, Assistant County Administrator, Megan Baker, and myself, we went down to downtown Roanoke to listen to Barry Duvall with the Virginia Chamber of Commerce. 2 things that he brought up. One was talent attraction and keeping good talent here, which we've all heard before. It's just resonated in his comments today. The second thing is, which is timely tonight when we heard solar, is Virginia is a net importer of energy. And so this just drives a conversation that all the interest in solar and energy in particular in Virginia has some merit, so that we become we don't become a net importer. And lastly, we all, I think, have talked about this over the years and seen this, but this is a book that was handed out to everyone that went there. And this blueprint plan is in large part one of the reasons why Virginia is chosen as the #1 state to do business by CNBC. But one of the biggest things that they look for in areas when they're considering this, and states as well, is the regionalism. You have to be regional in your mind thinking. And that's one of the things Raleigh does in North Carolina, and that's one of the things that we're doing that makes this state good. So any areas that emphasize regionalism, working with your neighbors, your cities, your counties, scores well and benefits everybody. So we got to keep those efforts up, and I know we do a good job of that, and we'll continue to in the future. So that's all I have. Thank you very much. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Radford?
Yes.
Mrs. Hooker?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mrs. Shepherd?
Yes.
Mr. Norton?
Yes.
In a minute, more with paleontologist Ken Lacavara. He explains the geological conditions needed to preserve extraordinary fossils, like the one he found in Patagonia, that led to the discovery of one of the biggest species of dinosaur to ever exist. On the show today, the day the dinosaurs died. I'm Manoush Zamarodi, and you're